what's happening in 2024 because 2023 is nearly ended. So I think they're all planning for next year, very much so. I think they're coming towards the end of the year. We're off the financial end. We've got the yes vote, we've got the Melbourne Cup, we've got Christmas coming, we've got January, and I think that momentum has already started. I think people are wanting to get their minds around what the heck do we do next year in terms of, you know, their offices, their workplace policies as far as flexible working is concerned, where the economy is going, particularly in the next 18 months. I have some certain views on that, along with others, but particularly in relation to the commercial property market, where it's the greatest time for any tenant to be, you know, dealing with this current environment. You don't get this very often, so it's a good way to reduce their bottom line. I think China's going to play an impact on where people think over the next 18 months. If it isn't in their thinking, just in general, it should be. The wars, I mean, we've got that terrible situation last night, which has happened, the commercial property market itself, and how are we going to reduce bottom lines? We are starting to see and hear about some redundancies being made in the last 2 weeks. We've heard each Friday, we're hearing more and more about redundancies happening. So I think people need to be more cognizant of that. I think there's several responses to that, Ed. Firstly, you've got to look at what's happening in the world and not just Australia with the hybrid approach. England is doing something very different to Australia. New York, United States is doing something very different to Australia and England, and Australia is approaching it in a different way. So I think you need to see what the world is doing, what is working over there, what could work here. I think, and I'll be talking more about that, but the main thing is trying to find out for each organisation. They're all different, you know. Some can cope with people coming back into work. Some can accommodate people working from home. It depends on the industry, the culture, the organisation, the size of it, and the job description itself. So, you know, there's bits and pieces that make up this puzzle to rather than saying what are the positives of hybrid. What we're seeing in the last month is most of our clients are looking at a 4 versus 1 day, 4 days back in the office and 1 at home, rather than what they call the TWAT brigade, which is the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday mob. And, you know, there's a reason people take the Friday and Monday off, and I don't want to be too obvious about that, but I will talk further about that. I think the hybrid workplace policies from people and culture that are involved also need to be more scrutinised and looked at and made sure that they are filtering what is right for the organisation. You know, we need to be looking collectively, not individually, and that's the problem that has developed post-COVID. So to get the answer to your question, which I will give when we meet, and the positives of that, we need to look at all those factors first. There's 3 things. The first thing is that I am a strong believer that the CEOs, and I mean the CEOs, they need to, I'm encouraging them, we are encouraging them to get amongst their staff, to speak with them, to understand their pain points. You know, there's an unemployment rate now which stands at about 3.7, and so we here we're aware of that. You've got to retain, you've got to attract the right staff within your organisation. You've got to the phrase I've coined is earn the commute, which I got to say, Ed, is being used by a few other people, but it did come from me. Earn the commute. So given all those things and earning that, you have to have an environment within the office that is enjoyable for all types, levels, personalities, the introverts, the extroverts, the wiser generation, let me call them that because I'm part of it, the younger generation, the X, Y, Z generation. There has to be a model that excites people to come into the office post-COVID and understand the benefits of being together. So it has to be flexible and it has to be more home-like. We've got a model that we think we're starting to introduce, and it's working very, very well. Look, I think that's too generalist a question, to be honest with you. I think KPIs are very, very individual to each organisation, particularly to the culture, and I think they have gone out the door since COVID. I think no one has rethought the KPIs enough, and it's a major issue because it's got to be the senior management team, the executive leadership team that understands what those goals are for each individual. And half the time now post-COVID, I don't think they understand what the goals are and what people are doing and what frustrations they're having at home if they haven't, they're not there being part of them and seeing where those gaps are. So it's a very hard question to answer because it's very individual, but I think there's some laziness that has developed in identifying which KPI for that organisation and for that employment and for that team is relevant now post-COVID. It's been a slack situation from a lot of leaders. They can't blame the younger generations all the time. I think, again, that comes back to this original question of you asked earlier, where you need to entice and attract people into the office in order for the fallout of those resilience strategies to be relevant. And I think the productivity levels, which, you keep saying there's another productivity report coming out and yep, it's showing that this person's doing that level of work, and yes, they're on the computer for X amount of days, and some jobs, it's down to their sales. Very easy to monitor that. If you're in a call center, sorry, we do quite a few call centers. And of course you can do that job from home and it's fine. But the productivity measurement scale, which is a major part of a resilient strategy, is the number one problem that needs to be redefined post-COVID. The second is about creating leaders. And this is one of the things I'm most passionate about. I wish to heck I was, back in my 20s, because I can tell you, if I had an environment like this, where unemployment was like it was, and if you're in the office 5 days a week, you are seeing some of the senior leadership teams in there. If the CEO spent the time to walk around and talk to some of these people and ask what they're doing in their job, why are they coming in, what do they want to do? These are the people that are going to be the future leaders of any organisation, because they've got that mindset. They're obviously career focused. That doesn't mean everyone is. People who aren't career focused, like the guy from IBM said, if you want a career, come into the office. If you don't, that's cool. Stay at home, your choice. So the choice is yours, and I think that's important. But if you do want a career, I was always very hungry in those days. That's just my DNA. But that doesn't mean everyone is the same. But if you are, we have to have people being able to lead these organisations through. And they can't do it on no experience. People pay me for my experience. And the only way I can get that is to get older and solve problems. And that's really the most valuable thing, because unless you've identified those problems and had to solve them yourself and gone through, sometimes quite a lot of pain, it's tough. So that's part of the productivity, the resilience, and the people to be flexible, I think is what's, they're saying they're being flexible by working home, but actually not being flexible for the corporation itself. So it's the adaptability of some of these people that also needs to be, reinvigorated And they can't do that if the leadership teams are going to sit on their bottoms and do blooming nothing. They've got to get out there and be focused at it and be interested in that generation. %. I would say as high as that. This is one of my most passionate points. I think that leaders have to take a sense of responsibility for invigorating their staff, for getting them enthusiastic, for bringing them in. I mean, you know, you can look at model and say, yes, we'll put on, you know, coffee and tea and we'll do a pizza night and we'll do this and that. It's actually not that. People who really want to learn, who are genuinely interested in their company or their career or what they're doing, they need to be absolutely, to use your word, nurtured. And there's not a lot of that happening. But I think that's the big difference, Ed, between the senior management, middle management, and below. There's a very, very distinct gap in a lot of organisations, not in all, but in a lot of organisations, and it's got to be closed. It's got very relaxed and no one really cares about it post-COVID, cares about it enough to move us forward into the next generation. And unless we deal with it now, we're going to find a situation where the next 18 months is really, really tough. You know, there's a lot of people your generation that, as you keep hearing, you know, you haven't seen a recession, you haven't seen the mortgage rates up at 17%, you know, you don't own a home, you don't do this. I mean, the younger generation's hearing all of this. It means nothing to them because they haven't lived through that. So it is up to our generation to guide them through that, to try and help them if they're interested. But frankly, there are some that just aren't. I mean, I will share, you know, half a dozen stories of people trying to say they work at home the whole time. You know, I got friends that have got daughters working in large organisations, and I'll say to them, oh, you know, what are you doing today? And they'll say, oh, so-and-so's working from home today, so it's great. We're going to go and have lunch, do a bit of shopping. She needs some dresses for this and da-da-da. And I'll think, jeepers creepers. I said, and you wonder why I've been so outspoken on this. So, you know, it's hard. There's got to be a meeting of minds between, if you looked at it in simplistic terms, on one end of the scale to the other end of the scale. And it's very unbalanced at the moment. As I've covered a wee bit, you know, the CEOs need to get more involved. They need to take control. They need to get some whatsies, frankly, and demand when people are coming in, but they need to provide the right environment. Demand might be a wee bit of a strong word, but that's a sense of frustration coming from me. You know, they need to be watering down. It's like watering your plants. You know, they're never going to grow unless you water them and you fertilize them and you feed them. They're not going to grow. And some will always turn into weeds. You know, some will turn into beautiful blooms, and some will be those flowers within that paddock that you have to have for the others to be sustainable. But unless those CEOs learn how to water and feed them, we've got big problems coming up in the next 10 years with leaders of organisations and how it's going to work. And now's the time to be fixing that. But it has to come from the top, in my opinion. They're one of the biggest problems. They are very self-focused. They are generally the ones that have kids working from home. Kids going to school. They need to work at home. They need to make their life livable. All of that sort of thing. But it's not all about them. And they're the ones that create the policies for the flexible working. Now, they're going to hate me saying it, because they'll feel I'm attacking them. And, you know, how do you balance all these things up in the air? And childcare is expensive. And this is, I mean, I've had all the criticism online. I get all of that. But that's okay. If you still have a choice. If you don't want to be paid the big salaries and you want to work at home and you want to be a mum or a dad or a carer or whatever it might be, that's okay for a period of time. But that shouldn't come at the cost of those below you, and frankly, those above you who are relying on you to provide the right solutions for the organisation moving forward in the next 5 years. During COVID, it certainly improved our ability to have these Zoom calls, to have the team calls, to do all of that. I think it certainly has improved that. But I think in actual fact, quite frankly, they've got slack too. It was easy. It was great. They got everyone working from home, but they've sort of stopped. They've got over that. And I think there's got to be more focus on the technology back in the offices. It's got to be more advanced, more refreshed. And then we will get back to, you know, we were heralding IT during COVID and what a brilliant job they all did, and they did. But I think they've got to reinvent themselves in this new generation. Really, really would love to talk to middle management, to senior management. I'd like to understand their pain points. I'd like to understand what they're experiencing within their organisations. I'd love to share some of my views to see whether that resonates with them. You know, I'm very much a people person. So for me, I'm a listener. I'm thoughtful, I'm passionate. I hope that comes across because I am passionate about what I do. And I just love to hear whether they agree or disagree with me and whether they think there's a better or different way forward that can be discussed that we can get out of this symposium moving forward.